Okay, good to see you. Um, we have our regular crew of people. A visitor, Jess Vega. I'm not sure she's in the right room. if you're, if you're, if you were expecting something else, Jess, this is the illumination of the intention class. But at any rate, um, we're going to begin with a motivation and some prayers. Most of you know them. Sangye churang suki chognam la changchu baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki drola penchir sangye drupa sho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all wandering beings, all migrators. The Tibetan term is droa, and here it says drola, two, two migrators. Sangye churang soki chognam la jangchu baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunen gipe sognam ki drola penchir sangye drupa sho. Sashi Pogi Chukshing Meto Tram Ram Lingji Nide Yen Padi Sange Shindu Mikte Uargi Trokunam Dakshing La Chupasho. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be subdued. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niryatayami. When I said subdued, this is dulja. Dua means like when we talk about what's it called? Vinaya and so forth. Vinaya is called dua, sort of like that which helps you to control or subdue. So good to see you. Hi, Amy. KT's here. I guess that young lady that was here for a moment disappeared. She was in the wrong class. Right? Hi, Don and Paul and Yeshe. I guess everyone is here. Karen is here. So we're going to begin as usual with a little meditation to try to clarify to solidify our motivation. So sit comfortably. We're going to do successively the meditation on the watching the respiration and then on the clear light nature of the mind. Try to be aware if your mind is subtly multitasking. That is to say, watching the respiration partially, but kind of following some thoughts in the background. Remind yourself you can deal with those later and invest that mental energy into the mindfulness of the respiration. You had the leisure to do by yourself, you would continue until you felt you had 21 cycles of breath without missing a beat. You remembered when you were breathing in, when you were breathing out, the endpoints, whether they were long or short, and the numbers. If you forgot any of those elements, if you forgot when you were on breath 6, you forgot it was 6, you go back to number 1. But here, this is sufficient now. Bring your attention now to a more subtle object, your mental consciousness. Bringing your attention away from the senses like a turtle or tortoise withdrawing its head and arms. Bringing your attention sort of to your heart chakra, away from the senses. Just watching the gross mind. Not to be confused with what the senses are seeing or hearing, because you've tried to withdraw your attention away from them. And try to recall from constant practice this conventional clear light nature of the mind, which is non-conceptualizing. It's not bringing up thoughts, or it's non-discursive. It's without elaborations, mental elaborations. And has a nature of of not impeding the entry into the mind of thoughts, images, emotional states, and not impeding their absorption back into the consciousness. If you get distracted, if a thought arises, recognizing its very presence as indicative of the fact that the mind is not obstructing this conventional mind. Take your attention away from the objective thought and place it on the subjective mind that's realizing it, this clear light nature of the mind. And you can think how lucky you are, rather than wallowing in our usual samsaric self-pity. We have Buddha nature. We can recognize it. We can develop qualities. We can eliminate our faults. Slowly, slowly, surely, but definitely we notice a difference in our mind, in our behavior, a difference between now and when we began practicing. We may still get excited and angry or happy and exuberant over different things, worldly things, but our mind has more equilibrium. If we do get angry, we're able to calm it more quickly. And we recognize that as a fault, getting angry, which we may not have recognized so much before. We may have seen it as a social fault that people would criticize us for being angry. We can use this nature that we recognize now due to this auspicious moment of having a life of leisure and endowment, which the Buddha praised so often as being rare and precious, rarely found. We can use this to achieve Dharma aims, the very minimum to work for the happiness of future lives by overcoming our obsession with the present life circumstances, overcoming our fascination, attachment with the 8 worldly concerns, 4 which involve wanting to have we can work for future lifetimes by controlling our attachment and anger, ignorance, and other klesha. More elevated, we can work for liberation from cyclic existence, knowing that even if we found a succession of God or human lives in the future, they also would end like this in death, aging, and we would be faced with, again, possibly falling into the lower realms, cycling, circling in samsara continually. So better to get out of it completely as a person of intermediate scope, but more profoundly, as the Buddha advised, to follow his Mahayana if he were intelligent. At first, maybe we don't have the compassion, the empathy, but just knowing the Buddha's advice that this was such a rare opportunity to develop bodhicitta, a mind that views the suffering of sentient beings, those beings who it views as kind and heartwarming for various reasons, as they've been our mother, our friend, even as our enemy, they've helped us, views them with compassion, empathy in the sense we put ourselves in their shoes, exchanging ourselves and others. And once we start to experience that, to develop compassion, love, the exceptional thought, in order to become enlightened, not just to escape from cyclic existence alone, but as a byproduct, we will escape from cyclic existence by following the Mahayana path. And in so doing, as we become a bodhisattva, a higher bodhisattva, eventually enlightened, we can benefit sentient beings more authentically, not just with superficial advice for the present life, but leading them successively out of their various problematic states, various states of mind, into enlightenment itself. To achieve that, we have to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom, which we know little about. Maybe a little. We know we want to collect merit, good karma, and avoid bad karma. But we also have to accumulate the collection of wisdom, which arises through meditating on the meaning of emptiness, which is explained in Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, which is based on the Buddhist teachings, the Prajnaparamita Sutras, commented on by Chandrakirti, Bhavaviveka, Buddhapalita, and so forth. But particularly Chandrakirti's commentary and Lama Tsongkhapa's treatise that we're studying, commenting on that text by Chandrakirti, especially, which explains both the how to accumulate merit and wisdom, especially wisdom. So think, I'm going to participate today in order to accumulate the two collections in order to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, because having become Buddha, I can effortlessly, spontaneously, and without error benefit sentient beings continually. I'm going to participate today in order to become enlightened for the sake of sentient beings. Okay. So, how are you doing? Okay. So Don, I saw you took off your glasses. When you meditate, do you take off your glasses? Some people do.
Sometimes I do. I have to remember the time the Dalai Lama said, jokingly, I think, if you use a vision for your meditation, you should wear your glasses, you'll see it better.
Yeah. Yeah, it varies. In some circumstances, if you're used to seeing better with your glasses when you're trying to visualize, even if your eyes are partially closed, putting on your glasses, having them there may help mentally. In other cases, maybe it's better to take them off. How are we doing? Anyone have any questions before we start? How are we doing? No? Oh, Stephen has a question.
Thank you, Venerable George. So I was just glancing through the document that Doris kindly shared with us. That's the excerpt from Geshe Sopa's great commentary.
Right.
And the section that interested me was here, I think it's in the second page. In any case, the immediately preceding condition of any consciousness is also a consciousness. Okay. So more precisely, it is a similar immediately preceding condition.
Right.
I was wondering about similar here, especially in the context of consciousness. We've got the 5 similarities. But it's possible to have, I guess, a non-virtuous mind and then follow that with a virtuous mind. So to me, that's not exactly similar. It's like somewhat similar, but not similar.
Right.
I wondered if you might say something about that.
So, similar in the sense that they are consciousness. I think that's the main thing there.
And also, he says, in contrast, although external things may be said to have an immediately preceding condition, that cause is not necessarily similar to the result.
Right.
But in our arguments about inherent
So that particular term, the way that it's phrased when it says similar, that only refers to consciousnesses because they have a similar kind of cause and result. They're both conscious, whereas in the case of a seed and a sprout, they are not similar. The sprout is going to be something different than the seed itself. I think that's the point there.
right. But there would be some level of similarity. For example, you wouldn't have a candle creating darkness or resulting in darkness.
Right. That gets off into another argument, though. Well, they'll be coming up. Okay. I wanted to mention just a couple of things before I even start the motivation, another motivation that Geshe Zopa gave when he was talking about this subject back in 2002. And that is the 8 worldly dharmas. I've mentioned several times. Taking refuge, 8 worldly dharmas. These are sort of essential kinds of meditations that we need to put some of our effort into, to keep in mind during the day. I think I've mentioned before that it said that Milarepa, in a previous life, the life immediately preceding when he achieved his enlightenment under the tutelage of Marpa and so forth, he had been a follower of, I'm not sure. I think maybe he had been a follower of Shantideva or of Atisha. I can't remember which, but he was renowned to be sort of obsessed with always observing his mind to avoid the 8 worldly dharmas. And he would even say it, to engage in the 8, in speech. To engage in the 8 worldly dharmas is not something worthy of me. This is, something, this is kind of a state of mind that I should avoid. So, in the Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Puja, the Ganden Lagema, in the verse of praise to Lama Tsongkhapa, it says that you have made this life useful by abandoning the 8 the worldly dharmas and so forth. So this is very, very high praise. You might think that, you know, the verse of praise of Lama Tsongkhapa would involve, you know, some kind of exquisite or subtle qualities, talking about his practice of the illusory body or clear light or something like this, but it goes back right to the fundamentals. Do you know what verse I'm talking about? Does anyone have the Tibetan of that right there in front of you? Mary Ellen, do you have?
Probably English, not
Yeah. What does it say?
I need to find it. I'm sorry.
Paul, do you know the verse in Tibetan? Do you recite Ganden Lagaba?
I don't regularly recite it. No, unfortunately. I'm trying to find it right now. I'm sure I have a copy.
Yeah. Mary Ellen, do you find it?
I just have the short version here. I don't have it.
The short version of Ganden Lagaba.
Yeah.
That should be enough. That's the verse of praise. Yeah, it should have 8 verses in there, right?
Mm.
Okay, doesn't matter. Take a look if you can about that. And another thing I wanted to mention, maybe if you find it, you can put your hand up. Another thing I wanted to mention in the 6-session Guru Yoga, which some of you do, the medium version, which some people call the short version, there's a verse, Teksum Gyude Shidu Lungtok Cho, talking about the scriptural and realizational dharmas that are encompassed in the 3 vehicles, the Teksum and the Gyude Shi, which means the 4 sets of Tantra, Kriya Tantra, Charya Tantra, Yoga Tantra, Highest Yoga Tantra, with method to use that, to uphold those scriptural and realizational dharmas. That means to hear the teachings, to study them, to try to put them into practice, and then through that skillful means of upholding them, to completely liberate sentient beings. So that's one of the reasons we're chewing these dry bones, so to speak, to be able to have the skillful means through vast hearing, study, putting into practice, keeping our vows and so forth, that will allow us to be able to benefit sentient beings. Anyone find the verse in Ganden Lagaba? Louise, you find it?
But my pronunciation probably be terrible. Nikme du dir mang the druk lason. Chirge pangpe deljor dunya je.
Okay, so first of all, in this degenerate age, start it again. What did you say?
Nik du dir mang the druk lason.
You've strove mightily with great effort in this degenerate age. Then
Chirge pangpe deljor dunya je.
so you've made great use of this life of leisure and endowment, Deljor, through abandoning the 8 dharmas. That means the 8 worldly dharmas. So those are the main 2 lines of that I wanted to mention to you. So as I said before, in praising Lama Tsongkhapa, rather than praising all sorts of esoteric qualities, to say that you made good use of this this life of leisure and endowment, this auspicious moment, by abandoning the 8 dharmas, the 8 worldly dharmas, and so forth. So there's a more sophisticated way of understanding that. When we talk about abandoning the 8 dharmas, it can mean abandoning the 8 faults of realizing emptiness. But that's a question for another day. Okay, so I just wanted to mention on July 11th in 2002 in the morning, when Geshe-la, during our summer courses, we always had, he'd give the motivation in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we would just say some quick prayers and begin again. So at that point, he quoted from the Matrope Shue Do, the Anavatapta Nagaraja Pratipricha. So what is that, Paul? Do you know that sutra?
Yeah, that's the questions of the king of Naga, Anavatapta, I think.
Right. Anavatapta. So many sutras have this kind of thing, questioning or by someone, or the Buddha questioning them and interrogating them. So in that, this is one of the sources for the Prasangika understanding of emptiness. So this said, I won't read the Tibetan. He said, whatever is produced from conditions is not produced. Not he. Well, you can say he, the Buddha. Yeah. Okay. Whatever is produced from conditions is not produced. It does not have an inherent nature of production. That which depends upon conditions is considered empty. That which depends on conditions is considered empty. One who knows emptiness is wise, or sometimes the last word is diligent, sort of conscientious. So Geshe-la said, this means whatever thing is produced by conditions, that is not born in terms of being born inherently. It's not inherently born. Whatever produced thing, whatever thing that is produced has no inherent birth, no inherent production. Therefore, whatever depends on conditions, that is explained as empty of inherent production. Anyone who understands that is sometimes it says wise, or sometimes it says bakyu yin, which means conscientious or wise. Okay, so he gave a lot more explanation about that, but I'm not going to go into that now because we've done our own motivation before. So, getting back to our class. So last time we got up to the outline in Thupta Jinpa's text, refuting that standpoint, which for those who may not have noted, does anyone know which in Jinpa's text, what page that is?
204.
204? Is that right?
I think 206.
206. Okay.
Towards the bottom.
Refuting that standpoint. And in
Sorry.
go on. Someone said
I
sorry.
was just apologizing for giving the wrong page number.
Okay, no. 206. And in the FPMT, I think this is what? This is page in Venerable Jones' translation, 109, I believe, somewhere around there. Okay, so just to recapitulate right before that, in Jinpa's text, just before that, there's a quotation from Abhidharma Kosha, but just the prose right before that says, so were we to examine their characteristics, despite some slight variance in their names, all the conditions can be subsumed into 4 conditions. Okay, so that's the main thing that we should get out of that section that we've talked about. There are 4 conditions: causal condition. Well, who can name? Richard, do you know the 4 conditions? No? Okay. Jennifer?
If I remember correctly, I think it's causal condition, objective condition, antecedent condition, and the objective dominant condition.
Dominant condition. Did we get that in there? Dominant, objective, and what was the other one? Oh, antecedent, immediately preceding condition, right. So all the conditions can be subdued into the four conditions. So when we talk about causal condition, even if you talk about the arisal of the senses, the causal condition would include other things like the health of your body, because sometimes even the generation of your eye consciousness depends upon, your physicality, about the, whether you're experiencing a fever or extremely cold or something like that. So there are all sorts of other causal conditions included in that first one. Okay, I hear some voices downstairs. Okay, then the text continues, since Ishvara and so on are not conditions, there is no fifth condition. So this is referring to the non-Buddhists who believe that Ishvara is the sort of cause or condition for giving rise to the sort of the creator. So in our Western context, we would say in the Christian context, we're talking about God as the creator, right? This similar kind of thing. And God himself was not created by anyone else, right? Isn't that the general Christian and Jewish, maybe even Islamic position? God was not created by anyone else or anything else, right? So as though it is unconditioned, which is a contradiction. So the text continues, this must be definitely upheld, for it is stated in the Abhidharma Kosha, the treasury of Abhidharma, four conditions generate the mind and mental factors. So we just went over that, right? Three conditions produce both meditative attainments, and others arise from both causal and dominant conditions, not from Ishvara and so on, where things arise in sequence. So the fact that things arise in sequence is sort of an exact stating a proof of why by something that is permanent or unconditioned couldn't give rise to things. So I'm interested in the second line. The first line is clear, right? Four conditions generate the mind and mental factors. We just went over that. Three produce both meditative attainments. What's that talking about, Suvash? You know?
I'm afraid not, Venerable George.
Okay. Anyone have an idea? What are the two meditative attainments that are being talked about here?
Calm abiding and special insight.
Say again?
Calm abiding and special insight.
Oh, that's interesting take. No, that's not what Dharma Kosha was talking about here. How did Venerable Joan translate that? How did she translate? It's actually the Tibetan is Nyompa Nam Ni. Nomjuk Ni. She translated that. The two absorptions, Chimpa said attainments. Attainments doesn't sound right. Two absorptions. So Nyomjuk Ni, Paul, do you know what the two Nyomjuk are? The two absorptions, meditative absorptions?
I'm afraid I don't, Venerable George.
So they are the what do I say? Like in the fourth absorption of the formless realm, what is that called? Stephen's looking upward. as though the answer is up there.
The
So
peak of cyclic existence.
yeah, it's called peak of cyclic existence. What is it also? That's sort of that's a generalized name. What is that? What is the actual name of that absorption? The
It's not
absorption.
Akanish,
Go on.
not Akanishta.
No, it's not. It's not Akanishta. No. It's the, say,
Some.
for instance, the first formless absorption is absorption on what?
Space.
Space. Everything is space. And so forth. Paul, what are you thinking? Yeah. Okay.
I'm just trying to remember them all. It's been a long time since I've done that. I'll be doing the samsara stuff.
So one successively meditates on more and more abstract to the point where there is no, you meditate, there is no mind whatsoever. Finally, in the fourth absorption, in the formless realm, you have a state with neither perception nor non-perception. Does that ring a bell? So who can explain what that means? I was looking at Subhash, but Mikhail, do you know?
Is it the absorption without identification or without discrimination?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Where there is no more thought anymore.
Touché, yeah. So in terms of this, this is one of the absorptions that's being talked about here. Let me see. Let me just get to a little explanation that, oh, here it is. Geshe gave. So the day before this, in 2022, Geshe Zopa was talking about this verse that this mind and mental factors arise from four, we just talked about. Then the second line says, Sumgi Nyomjuk Namni. Only three conditions cause arisal of the two meditative absorptions. And he said, do you know what these absorptions are? Just as I'm doing to you right now. They are the absorption without discrimination, which we were just talking about, and cessational absorption. Now, do you remember cessational absorption? Okay, finally, someone's nodding. Stephen, where did come up cessational absorption in our class?
That was actually the ninth of the levels of the concentrations and the absorptions. So that is like a complete cessation of thought. I think it's some pati nirodha. I don't know Sanskrit, so I'm just kind of.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. But from our text, when we talked about cessational absorption, it came up when we talked about the fifth bhumi and the sixth bhumi. The fifth bhumi had some cessational absorption, special Mahayana cessational absorption, but the sixth bhumi, having the addition of the special practice of the perfection of wisdom, had a greater practice of that. And that was referring to the meditative equipoise on emptiness, right? And as a result of that, also being able to go in and out of that and so forth. So Geshe talked a little bit about that. They are the absorption without discrimination, which is the peak of cyclic existence, and cessational absorption. These two conscious levels, called Dushe Mepe Nyomjuk and Gokpe Nyomjuk. Dushe Mepa. Dushe is what we usually translate as discrimination. Dushe Mepa means without discrimination. Dushe Mepe Nyomjuk, the absorption without discrimination. and the Gokpe Nyomjuk. Gokpa means cessation. These are in Sanskrit asamad asamja samadpati. So as you remember, often the syllable is a negative particle when put before certain words. So that means not. Is a negative way. Samjna means not discriminating. Asamjna samapati. So samapati is what we're talking about here as sort of meditative absorption. One belongs to the Aryas, one belongs to ordinary people. That is between the absorption without discrimination and the absorption of cessation, the Nirodha Samapati. Earlier, Geshe-la talked about the absorption without discrimination. We talked about it, I think, when we were talking about the 5 bhumis and so forth, the first 5. Some yogis who are completely tired of the samsaric world, all of these things, especially desire, attachment, and so forth, wanting to free from these, their shamatha meditation and vipassana meditation having been achieved, then they achieved not only that through the first dhyana, second dhyana, and so forth. During the first dhyana, let me see if I got the right glasses on here. I think I don't have my reading glasses on. That's the problem. There we go. When they achieve the first dhyana, they get rid of the desire realm delusions, right? When you achieve the first dhyana. When you achieve the second dhyana, you get rid of, you've already gotten rid of those for the desire realm delusions. Also, you get rid of the delusions of, or the afflictions of the first dhyana, because you've achieved the second dhyana, the second absorption. When you achieve the third absorption, the way you do that is you use the mundane vipassana to look at the defects of the second dhyana and the benefits of the third dhyana. Then you achieve the third dhyana. So you're free of the afflictions of the second dhyana when you achieve the third. They are not abandoned from the seed, but temporarily abandoned. We say chakdel, liberation from the desire realm. The second dhyana, same way, they're separated from the delusions of the first dhyana and below. Then in the third dhyana up to the fourth dhyana, they achieved, the fourth dhyana meditation is very subtle. For meditators, here he was quoting again the Abhidharma Kosha. Kyunge le droe chir shipa yoa mepayin. So the kyunge means the 8 faults of meditation, the 8 faults of meditation technique. Free from those, the fourth dhyana is much more, acute kind of meditation. From that, then their mind will become more and more subtle. Of course, sense consciousnesses stop. Then mental consciousness also thinking this is good, this is bad, hatred, attachment, and so forth. So they are very tired. So they want to stop also mind. Mind and constructive thought and gross mental factors completely stop. Then they become more and more subtle than ordinary deep sleeping. Like that, they're able to equipoise. So that means all different thoughts, different feelings, senses are zeroed out, leveled out. In the Vaibhashika system, this is not called consciousness because there's no conscious activity, but Mahayana has a different idea. It is without consciousness. That time, the body is remaining as the base of consciousness with the seed of consciousness within it, but the consciousness itself is completely gone. But body does not decay because of the ability of those seeds and so forth. Therefore, that person looks like all consciousness is gone. Without discrimination means no discrimination or perception, no consciousness. Samjnana. Samjnana means thought, thinking, or discrimination. Designates a negative in Sanskrit. Okay, equipoise, entering equipoise that way. Okay, so I'm not going to go into more detail, but I think I will post this. Was this already posted, Doris? Is Doris here?
I have what you sent me, a 2-page document. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, so that's already up on Facebook?
No, I thought that was just for me.
Okay, so this one I will try to send to Doris to put up on Facebook, so you can follow Geshe-la's argument about this. This is talking about this verse in our text that three produce both meditative attainments or meditative absorptions. Okay. So let's leave that. Jennifer, what do you think?
Oh, sorry, Venerable George. Just before we leave it, just to clarify, I have a couple of questions. One is the first to fourth dhyanas you mentioned are all in the formless realm. Is that correct?
What Geshe-la was talking about, first of all, were the 4 dhyanas of the form realm. First of all, when you achieve the the second dhyana, when you achieve the first dhyana, you are separated from attachment to the desire realm. So this is not yet talking about the formless realm. When you achieve the second dhyana, you're free from the attachment or the delusions, the afflictions of the first dhyana. When you achieve the third, you're free from the afflictions of the second, and so forth.
Thank you, Venerable George. And the fourth dhyana then also, so that's part of the form realm or formless realm?
That fourth dhyana is part of the form realm, right?
Form realm.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Not the peak of cyclic existence.
Right. So that's talking about something else. So anyway, I won't go into more detail about that now. And in the discussion group on Monday, if you're interested, we can go over this discussion that's talking about that verse. But here, let's leave that to having explained that in some detail. Okay. So now we're going to begin with the refuting that standpoint. So now we get to the actual refutation of production from others. We've already talked about the refutation of production from self. So this has 2 outlines. In Jimpo's translation, refuting in general the standpoint that asserts arising from others. Refuting that standpoint in general, and refuting in particular the Chittamatra standpoint. Okay, so that will be getting into now when Lama Tsongkhapa begins to go into some particular refutations of the Chittamatra school from the Prasangika point of view. Some people might think that they're completely compatible, but they're not, okay? So here, first, general refutation of rising from others. This has 5 outlines. The actual refutation, rebutting objections to this refutation from the worldly perspective. And you remember from earlier what this kind of meaning is, rebutting objections. That means someone objects to our refutation in the first outline, actual refutation arising from others. You know, they object to that. They give some objections, and then we could rebut them or eliminate those objections by showing, you know, certain logical inconsistencies in their viewpoint. Third outline, the merits of refuting arising from others. Fourth, how intrinsic arising or inherent arising does not exist in any matter. So inherently existent production does not exist in any way. And then fifth, the benefits of negating intrinsic arising on both levels of the two truths. And as Venerable Joan translated that, let's see, when we talk about indicating the excellent qualities of refuting inherent production, even in regard to the two truths. So when it says here, and Jimpa says, arising on both levels of the two truths, it's not like the two truths each have two levels. I don't think that's what it's talking about. Indicating the excellent qualities of refuting inherent production in regard to the two truths. Okay. Now, again, more sub-outlines. When we're talking, what we're going to be now is the actual refutation, which itself is incredibly fascinating and easy, it's short, but there are all these other complications that come up. So that what we're talking about now is that first outline, actual refutation. So that has itself three outlines. General refutation of arising from others, I say sort of simply put and so forth, and specific refutation of arising from others. And third, refutation of arising from other by examining the four possibilities with respect to effects. Okay, so now, general refutation of arising from others, that itself has two outlines. Refuting by revealing absurd consequences and rejecting the response aimed at avoiding those faults. We show absurd consequences, first of all, and then when people respond to, you know, it is in trying to avoid those faults, we reject those responses. Okay. Okay, so then this also, the first one, refuting by revealing absurd consequences, has two outlines. The first has two parts, the actual absurd consequences and the decisive analysis of these points. How would you like to translate decisive analysis, Paul? Deraki tache pao.
Yes, the Taju, that's, I mean, decisive analysis, I think, is Jeffrey's term. It's like cutting off the extremes or something like that, literally, right? Taju.
Oh no, this tr is not cutting. This tr is dao pa yata pa.
Analyzing, right?
Analyzing, right?
Right.
Analyzing. You could call it decisive analysis, final analysis. Ta means limit.
Right.
So you could call it analysis of the scope, you know, the limits, analysis of the limits. So anyway, that will be the second outline. So first of all, the actual absurd consequences. The arising from other cannot be posited, for it is contrary to reason and scripture. With respect to the latter, even usually you could say, why don't you just, if you're going to explain the latter first, why don't you put the order different? Why don't you say contrary to scripture and reasoning? So it's just like, the ease in which one phrases it in Tibetan. Usually you say reason and scripture in that order, but here it says, with respect to the latter, that means scriptural citations. The thesis of arising from other contradicts many scriptural sources. Now, there are many, many, but here it only gives one, and in that just very, very one sentence almost, one pada, in the Rice Seedling Sutra. And that line is, and that sprout of name and form was not created by itself, nor by something other. That sprout of name and form was not created by itself, nor by something other. What does that mean? When we say that sprout of name and form, does the sprout have, when we say name and form, what does that mean generally?
The 12, one of the 12 things.
One of the that's the name of one of the 12 links, right? Mingdang Suki Nugu Deyang Daki Mache Shengi Mache She. So Mingdang Suk, when we talk about the 12 links, what does name and form refer to? Who knows? Suvash knows these things. When we talk about name and form.
Nama Rupa.
Right? Nama, Rupa. Nama means name. Rupa means form. What does that mean?
It refers to the skandhas.
Right? So the Rupa skanda refers to the form aggregate. That's one of the 5 aggregates. The Nama, oops, there's a finger again. The Nama skandhas refer to what?
Refers to the designation, the name.
No, this refers to the other 4 skandhas upon which the person is named. So the person is named or designated, imputed upon the 5 skandhas, right?
Right.
5 skandhas are called nama rupa. So if someone, when in the 12 links, when it talks about nama rupa, that means one is born and has both a form aggregate and the name aggregates. What are the name aggregates? That's what I'm getting at.
The name aggregates are feeling, discrimination, formation, and consciousness.
Right. Compositional factors and consciousness. Right. The 4, when we talk about the five skandhas, the 4 skandhas other than form are called the name skandhas. So in the formless realm, according to Abhidharma, the lower Abhidharma, there's no form. When I say that, there is some kind of subtle form, but even in Tantra, it's definitely something is there, the subtlemost form. But there's no gross form in the formless realm. So the person there is designated on only the nama skandhas, only on the 4 skandhas that remain, even though there's no form. There'll be consciousness, feeling, compositional factors, and what did I say? Feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and primary consciousness. They'll all be there. Okay. So what does it mean here when it's talking about the sprout of name and form was not created by itself? Does the sprout have consciousness? Good. I see most people are saying no. Good. I'm glad to see some reaction. Mary Ellen, you had your hand up, I think, for a second.
Yes, I'm just reminded that we're halfway through if you need to take a stretch break.
Okay, let's just finish this and we'll take a break. So let's see. That sprout of name and form was not created by itself, nor by something other. Then the text continues to explain that arising from other is contrary to reason. The following is stated. So that's supposed to be, that one statement is supposed to be the scriptural source one scriptural source. There are many. It's not as though that's the only place where it says things are not produced from other, but this is just one famous one. But I'm just investigating what it means. That sprout of name and form was not created by itself. If we just said, and that sprout is not created by itself nor by something other, that would be okay, right? But to say that sprout of name and form was not created by itself nor by something other, that sounds a little bit problematic.
Can we say that the link of name and form is a sprout in the sense of it, that it is created by the seed of the preceding link?
Say that again?
The link name and form is a sprout in the sense that it is created by the preceding link, which is its seed.
Right. Well, here we're talking about the Rice Seedling Sutra. So this sutra is very famous for talking about, as a source of various Buddhist ideas about the 12 links, especially. And it's talking about in terms of a rice seedling. So kind of like what we've been talking about, the seed giving rise to the sprout and so forth. So it's not quite completely clear. So we'll clarify that, why that's called the sprout of name and form. It's not specified here. And in Jimpa's note, I think that note 391 only refers to the Samstamba Sutra, which is the Rice Seedling Sutra. So I'll check in that sutra to see if in who was his commentary? I think, what was it, Paul Vasubandhu wrote commentary, or was it
Kamala Shila?
Kamala Shila wrote commentary to the Rice Seedling Sutra. So we'll take a look at that, see what's being talked about that. But we'll take a little break now, just for a couple of minutes. If you need to stretch your legs, get a cup of tea, go to the bathroom, and we'll be back after that. You can continue to discuss. Feel free. So, okay, we're back again. Did you get your tea? Get a chance to relax? So how are we doing? So I think Mikhail's suggestion, is Mikhail here? Is he right in front of me? I don't see him. Oh, there he is. His symbol is there. I see. I think Mikhail's suggestion about the sprout and the sprout of name and form, that sounds quite possible. So we'll investigate that. Talking about name and form of the 12 links as being a sprout in the sense of being the result of the previous link, right? What's the previous link to name and form? Is Mikhail back? What do we have? Ignorance, karmic formations, consciousness, which has been imbued with that karmic seed, and then name and form. It's the fourth link. So name and form would be the result, or what follows after the condition of consciousness, when that consciousness ripens. So that sounds quite feasible. So we'll check on that. So now, to explain that arising from other is contrary to reason. So in other words, we've just given this one scriptural source as representative of many others, not to think that that's the only scriptural source, but now the reasoning. So generally, when we talk about analyzing, we usually talk about using scripture and reasoning. So as I mentioned before, many times Lama Zopa Rinpoche would say that if you want to understand emptiness, it's not enough just to depend on reasoning alone. You need to depend on scriptural citations that can give insight that you have some confidence in from having developed appreciation of the Buddha's qualities and so forth, and having developed confidence that he is pramana, that he is an authentic, reliable person and so forth. So now the reasoning. So this is verse 614, which again doesn't appear in Lama Tsongkhapa's text. This is added, pasted on from the Karakas, the Majjhimaka Vatara Karaka. If something can originate from something other, something can be produced from something which is other than itself, then pitch darkness can originate from burning flames. Right there you have, that's all you need. Anyway, in fact, everything could arise from everything. Anything could arise from anything else, in other words. You could just, it would just be a hodgepodge. For, after, as she says, for after all, being equally other pertains to all non-producing things. So not only impermanent phenomena, but even non-products are other, right? They're equally other. So this is talking about from the perspective, from the Prasangika perspective of criticizing, refuting production from others that the lower schools assert, which talking about production from an inherently existing other, something. So this is not just that the other exists itself inherently, but is inherently other than the result, right? So the text continues, if independence on a cause that is intrinsically other, so the result, and here's the cause, here's the result. Something, that is the result, is produced from an intrinsically and inherently different cause. An intrinsically different effect can originate. If that can happen, then pitch darkness can originate from burning flames. How does that happen? Does that make sense? Anna, you say no. Why not? Let's assume that something intrinsically, that something that is produced from something which is intrinsically other, if that can happen, what are the consequences of that? So say, for instance, if you talk about flames are, the tongue of the flames and so forth are what usually eliminate darkness, right? If you have, like say, if you have a butter lamp, the little flame of that butter lamp is what sends out the light that dispels or eliminates darkness. But because darkness and flame are intrinsically, inherently different, if something can arise from something which is inherently different, then darkness, pitch darkness, can originate from burning flames, which are actually what is dispelled, and that which dispels. What is dispelled? Amy? By a flame?
Yes.
What is
Darkness.
darkness? And what is that which dispels?
Flame.
Flame. Yeah, yeah. Like to say the flame of a butter lamp. You could say the flame of a fire, and when you go out with Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or something like that. Venerable Joan translated a little bit differently here. If independence on other, there arises another, in that case, even from tongues of fire, that's what Jimpa's just translating as flames, there would arise thick darkness. And also from all would be produced. So also from everything or anything could be produced. Because of that, there would be not anything that at all acts to produce, and they would be similar to otherness. I think she has an extra line on there that Jimpa didn't have, right? That's coming. Okay. So she says, the refutation of production from other, from the viewpoint of reasoning, is stated as follows. Independence on another, if independence on another, on other, a cause which is established by way of its own entity, there arises another, a result which is established by way of its own entity. In that case, even from blazing tongues of fire, even from flames, and then she has in parentheses, that which dispels. That parentheses does not, that's actually in the text. The flames are that, the dispeller of darkness. There would arise thick darkness, you could say dash, that which is dispelled. Furthermore, also from all causes and non-causes, all things and non-things which are results would be produced. Okay. Does that argument make sense? KT, what do you think?
Yeah, it feels like things would become chaotic and cause and effect would be reversed, and things like this might happen if that was so.
So what's a crucial point here? What is it special about being intrinsically other? Usually we would, the President Giga would say that things are produced from something which is other, conventionally other. The sprout is produced from a conventionally other seed. The seed is other than the sprout. But if you say intrinsically or inherently other, what does that mean? That means that they have no relationship between one another. If something is intrinsically existent, or let's say inherently existent, that means it is existing from its own side without dependence on any other factors. That's kind of the sense that we have of our own self, when you just talk about the object of negation of personal selflessness, right? It's just like something existing there by itself, not depending on the aggregates, not depending on anything else, just existing there. So that's kind of the crucial point here. If independence on a cause that is inherently other, or Jim says intrinsically other, something, an inherently different effect can originate, then pitch darkness can originate from burning flames, which are actually that which is dispelled and that which dispels. In fact, everything, regardless of whether it is an effect or not, could arise from anything else, whether it is a cause or not. Why? Here's the crucial thing. I'll get to you in a moment, Amy. Why? Because all non-producing things, insofar as being something intrinsically other with respect to the effect, so with respect to the effect, everything other than the effect is intrinsically other. When you talk about other, you talk about either the same or other. the effect, anything which is other than the effect is other. And if you're talking about intrinsically other, that means everything besides the effect would have no connection with it whatsoever, would not have any kind of action to change that effect in any way. So it says, why? Because all non-producing things, insofar as being something intrinsically other with respect to the effect, are exactly equal to those things that are accepted as the cause of that effect. So say, for instance, what's accepted as the cause of the sprout is the seed, right? But if that seed is considered to be intrinsically, inherently different than the sprout is inherently different than the seed, then anything else that's intrinsically different, inherently different than the sprout, would also be able to give rise to it, would be its cause. Why? Because all non-producing things, insofar as being something intrinsically other with respect to the effect, are exactly equal to those things that are accepted as the cause of that effect. When it says all non-producing things, I think that's not referring to, uncompounded space. It just means those things that do not produce the effect, non-producing things, insofar as being something intrinsically other with respect to the effect, are exactly equal to those things that are accepted as the cause of that effect. Thus, these two extreme, absurd consequences ensue from the opponent's own accepted reasoning. Amy, did you get caught somewhere in there?
I keep thinking throughout this last part that we're talking about, we can put God into that category. The Judeo-Christian idea of God.
Right.
Would you agree?
Generally, yeah.
That this is a refutation of that?
So yeah, well, there's other critiques of that also. Earlier, when we talked about that other verse that we just finished before this outline began, talking about Ishvara, not from Ishvara and so forth, for things arise in sequence.
Yeah.
We'll go about that. We'll talk about that on Monday a little bit more. So Ishvara is like the creator from a certain Vedic perspective. Who is the general creator? Snehi, what is it? Shiva? Generally, no, Shiva's a destroyer.
Brahma is considered to be the creator.
Brahman, yeah. So Brahman, Shiva, and what is it? Is there a third one of that?
Vishnu.
Vishnu, kind of like the moderator.
Preserver.
Right, preserver. Okay. So in some contexts, it's Brahma. In some contexts, it's said that Ishvara or Indra is the creator. So in some Vedic traditions. So if you're talking about that, you could apply it also to Brahma. If it is a creator, was that creator he or she, Ishvara or Brahma, were they created? Usually according to those theologies, and also to the peoples of the book, the Christian, Jewish, and Islamic faiths, the Godhead is something which was not created by someone else. Wasn't born, right? So if he wasn't born, that would mean that he was permanent to a certain degree. So you have to think about this, because when we talk about primordial Buddha and so forth and so on, it's not born. But anyway, generally that's what we're talking about here, can kind of refute the peoples of the book conception of the Godhead, Judeo-Christian Islamic vision of God, and also the Vedic ideas of Ishvara or Brahma being creator. Okay. So if independence upon a cause that is intrinsically other, something an intrinsically different effect can originate, then pitch darkness can originate from burning flames, which are actually what is dispelled. That is, the darkness is that which is dispelled, and that which dispels, that means the flames. In fact, everything, regardless of whether it is an effect, could arise from everything, whether it is a cause or not. So here's the crucial thing. Why? Because all non-producing things, anything that is not a producer of the sprout, let's say, darkness or horses or, cows or, the sun or moon or anything that's not a direct producer of the sprout, insofar as being something intrinsically other, inherently other with respect to that effect, all those things are inherently other, are exactly equal to those things that are accepted as the cause of that. So there are other causes besides the seed. There's also the manure and the water. Those are cooperative causes or, cooperative conditions and so forth. Thus, these two extreme absurd consequences ensued from the opponent's own reasoning. Are there two consequences here? Nadine, are there two consequences? It says, thus these two extreme absurd consequences. What are the two consequences?
One consequence is that everything could arise from everything.
Right.
The other is, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Mikhail?
That nothing could produce it.
Yeah.
Well, have we talked about that yet?
In the verse, I think, no.
If something can originate from something other, then pitch darkness can arise from burning flames. In fact, everything could arise from everything. So is it really two or is it just one? What do you think, Paul? Are there two absurd consequences here?
Well, usually when they say two absurd consequences, they mean the absurd consequences of permanence and nihilism, but I'm not sure that's what's being referred to here.
Right. Here it says, thus these two extreme consequences. Right. So Venerable Joan said, furthermore, what does it say here? Furthermore, also from all causes and non-causes, all things and non-things which are results would be produced. Oh, and then later she says, if these, then because of that, there would not be anything at all that acts to produce those results, and the two would be asserted as causes and results, and they would be similar to otherness that is established by way of its own character. These are the two very absurd consequences that are based on the signs asserted by others. In her note 15, she's saying signs means tensic or reasoning. Okay, so those are the two consequences. Does that come in Jimpa's thing here? Oh, he says, let me explain these two consequences. Okay, so the two consequences are coming. So first of all, you know what a consequence means, right? Rocio, do you know what a consequence is?
To me, it's like an effect, no?
You could say, yeah, you could say, as a consequence of your beating up your baby sister, you are now grounded as a consequence. as an effect. That's not what's meant. Consequence here is talking about in terms of logic. So, well, we talk about prasanga is a Sanskrit word, like from the word prasangika, school. Sometimes the prasangikas are called consequentialists. They say it's sufficient to, rather than giving an actual syllogism, logical statement, it's sufficient to show the consequence of someone's wrong views. Well, you can say the effect of their wrong views. You know, it follows that. That's usually what comes at the beginning of a logical statement, which is a consequence. That means as a consequence of your assumption, there would be these consequences. Okay, so that's kind of what's meant by consequence. When we talk about absurd consequence, Paul, are all consequences absurd consequences?
No. Why would there be?
Yeah, not necessarily. I remember one of our participants in the class with Geshe Zopa, I can't remember his name. He became a professor at some university in Oregon. Not Jim Blumenthal, another short fellow. He used to say that all consequences, you had to put the word absurd onto it. The word absurd here comes from an addendum to the word consequence. So consequence, prasanga, or in Tibetan, telwa, hachang telwa means absurd consequence. That means if you flung an absurd consequence at someone, that would mean that what you're showing them is some absurd result or consequence of their assumption that everything could arise from everything else and so forth and so on. Okay. Someone had their hand up a minute ago. Nadine, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I had an idea what the other consequence could be, that also permanent things have results. Permanent
Right.
things.
Okay, but here now in Venerable Jones' translation, the two consequences are stated here quite explicitly on page 110. You see, she says 1 and 2. Jimpa has sectioned off his thing into. He says, now let me explain these two consequences. He said earlier, thus these two extreme consequences ensue from the opponent's own accepted reasoning. Maybe what he means are these two, meaning these coming two consequences. So what are they? Just as, according to the opponent, a rice seed that produces the rice sprout is by virtue of its intrinsic characteristic other than its effect. So when you talk about intrinsic characteristic, Rangit Seni, I think, that's the same as saying intrinsically or inherently other. By virtue of it being inherently other than its effect, a rice seed that produces a rice sprout is, due to being inherently different, inherently other than its effect, the rice sprout, in the same way those things that do not produce rice sprouts, such as fire, charcoal, you might wonder why charcoal is being brought in here, barley seeds, and so on, they are also, by virtue of their intrinsic characters, other than the rice sprout. They are also inherently other, inherently different than the rice sprout. This is the way in which those who propound other arising assert their position. Now, if these two cases of being other are admitted as equal, well, so let's go back. So did you see in there two different consequences? Venerable Joan has them enumerated there. She said, why is that? Because of that, there would not be anything at all that acts to produce those results. And the two would be asserted as causes and results. And two, they would be similar to otherness that is established by way of its own character. These are the two very absurd consequences that are based on the reasons or signs, the tak, asserted by others. Is that any clearer? That's also not very clear, is it? Doris, do you agree that's not very clear?
Yes, I agree. It's not clear.
Okay, that's all you will say. I was trying to get. Richard, what do you think? Do you get any clarity from these two statements?
I thought that Jimpa was pretty clear. I have no idea what similar to otherness means.
Similar to otherness. Where do you see that?
That's in Venerable Joan.
They would be
It would be similar to otherness that is established by way of its own character. I have absolutely no idea what that means.
Maybe she means they would be similar in being other, in being merely other that is established by way of it. We'll see in a second. Mikhail, what do you think? What are the two absurd consequences here?
Yeah, I was wondering, yeah, in Chandrakirti's verse, we have only one consequence, but maybe the two, one is the one from the verse and the opposite of.
Okay, so the verse said, if something can originate from something other. Let me just see it, the Tibetan here. Shenla tene, if independence on another, gelte, if shenshik jungwa gyunani, if another were to arise, so it's using the word other both times. So it's saying if if it depends on another were to arise, or is Venerable Jones says, if in dependence on other, there arises another, in that case, so this is assuming both of them are inherently existent. In that case, even from the tongues of fire, there would arise thick darkness. Also, so here's the second. So that would mean even from the first one is even from things that are not its cause, anything else could arise. That is, even from the flames, thick darkness could arise. Also, from all would be produced. Because of that, there would not be anything at all that acts to produce, and they would be similar to otherness. She has the same thing, similar to otherness. Kepa, chepa, mayin, malu, la, yangshen, nisung. Otherness, their otherness would be similar. I think that would be, but rather than the way that she phrased it there. So Chimpa says, let me explain these two consequences. Just as according to the opponent, a rice seed that produces a rice sprout, by virtue of being intrinsically other than its effect, the rice sprout. Just as, according to the opponent, a rice sprout that produces a rice sprout is, by virtue of intrinsic characteristic other than its effect, the rice sprout. Just like that, those things that do not produce rice sprouts, fire, charcoal, barley seeds, and so on, are also, by virtue of their intrinsic characteristics other than the rice sprout. This is the way in which those who propound other arising assert their position. Now, if these two cases of being other are admitted as equal, what are the two? The rice seed and the rice sprout are other, and fire, charcoal, barley seeds, and so on are other than the rice sprout, right? Two different situations. If these two cases of other are admitted as equal, then just as from a rice seed, which is other, a rice sprout grows, then by extension, a rice sprout should arise from fire, charcoal, and so on as well. Following? Similarly, just as a rice sprout, which is other, grows from a rice seed, things like a vase, cloth, and so on must also come from a rice seed. Like this, parallels are drawn, and then he has in parentheses, between the two types of other. So this reasoning revealing such an extreme consequence is presented in the following in fundamental wisdom. So this is a verse from Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom. Does it say which verse this is? It's 292. This is chapter 20, verses 19 and 20. It looks like. Is that right? Not sure. 2019 CD and 20 CD. Sounds like the last two lines of two different verses. The cause and the effect that caused, yes, I think these are the last two lines of two different stanzas. That's why after in the second line there, where it says a thesis that is not tenable, ... So I think this is a compendium of two different verses. That cause and effect are different is a thesis that is not tenable. That means from the Prasangika point of view, cause and effect are not inherently different, are not inherently other. So it doesn't mean that they're not conventionally other. And then from another verse, it says, if cause and effect are different, inherently different, cause and non-cause would become equal. In the case of both of these consequence-revealing arguments, the commentary states that they throw their reversals. Oh, what does they say? 293. Although Chandrakirti does not explicitly address the question of whether these two consequence-revealing arguments throw their reverses, he does end each with a syllogism style proof statement that arising from other is untenable because we do not observe that pitch darkness comes from flames, and arising from other is untenable because we do not observe everything coming from everything else. So we're going to have to go over this again, but let's seeing now, looks like the two consequences of this. We do not see pitch darkness coming from flames, right? And arising from other is untenable because we do not observe everything coming from everything. What do you think?
Venerable George, to me, the most clear part was the passage when you read, then just as from a rice seed, a rice sprout should arise from fire and charcoal, etc. as well. Similarly, such as a sprout grows from a seed, things like a vase, cloth, other must also come from a rice seed. So I saw one of them as focusing on the causes, like any cause could create an effect, where the other one was like any cause could create any effect.
Right, right. I think that's right. So let's go back, look again. So let's start with Venerable Jones' translation here. On page 110. The refutation of production from other from the point of view of reasoning is stated as follows. So we'd already talked about the rice seedling sutra, and we'll investigate whether the sprout of name and form, what that means. If independence on other, another, and then a cause which is established by way of its own entity, there arises another, a result which is established by way of its own entity, or which is inherently existent. So what she has in italics there, she's drawing from the root verse, right? If independence on other, if you see the root verse right above that 614, what she has in italics there is also, that whole verse is italicized. If independence on other, and what that means, a cause which is inherently existent, there arises another, and what that means is a result that is established by way of its own entity. If dependence on other, there arises an other. So that means that they are inherently other than one another. In that case, even from blazing tongues of fire, or in other words, she has the Tibetans has the word tongue, che, but generally we say meche, that just means flame. The blazing tongues of fire, that means the flames of fire flames. In that case, from flames, which are the dispeller of darkness, there would arise thick darkness, which is that which is to be dispelled by flames. Furthermore, also from all causes and non-causes, all things and non-things which are results would be produced. So that seems to have the two things there. One is a specific case, or here, as Jennifer was saying, one is from point of view of causes and one is from the point of view of effects. The first one, because of that, there would not be anything at all that acts to produce those results, and the two would be asserted as causes and results. Does that make any sense to anyone? What she has there? Suvash?
Venerable George, no, I mean, I'm still ambivalent about what's about those two, but I had a related question for you on this.
Okay.
You know, we talk about we talk about arising from self and arising from other, and when we were talking about that, right, this whole discussion here took me back to arising from self and other. I always thought self and other, that space was exhaustive. It covered everything, all phenomena. Okay, you know, existent or non-existent, it covered everything. Is that not right? So I'll tell you why. Because throughout this, right, we've been talking about inherently existent self, inherently existent other, right? And you know, then in that case, is that exhaustive, right? That's another question that comes to my mind. And finally, you just also pointed out, right, that other does not take a other does not take what do you call it, a cooperative cause, is not subsumed under other, right? Therefore, in my mind, self and other is not a dichotomy.
I'm not sure your last statement there about cooperative causes are not other. They are other than the effect in the same way that the substantial cause, let's say, in the same way that the seed is other than the sprout, the seed being the substantial cause, the direct cause of the sprout, in the same way the water, manure, heat, and season, and so forth, they are also other than the sprout. So
Okay,
they are both equal to being other.
Okay, so those are equal to other, but they are not, that otherness is different from, you know, the fire and darkness
Okay,
situation.
let's state it like this. If two things exist, if A and B exist, they either have to be the same or different. They either have to be identical or other. They have to be one or other, let's say. Can I use that terminology?
Yes. Yes, true. It has to be same or other.
I was asking Paul, our Tibetan linguist expert here.
Sorry.
I'm conflating different and other here. And I say, usually we say that if two things exist, they have to be the same or different. Can I say they have to be the same or other? They have to be one or other?
Sure, why not?
I think so. I think that's okay here. So continue, Subhash.
So what I'm asking is, here when it says does not arise from other, it's not saying that the sprout does not arise from a seed or a substantial cause which is in its same continuum.
Yes, it is. In one sense we're getting caught up in the words and the concepts, but let's step back a little. So if a sprout arises, how does it arise? Did it arise of I don't know how to turn off that little figure coming
sprout,
up. Here, I haven't finished yet. I was just pausing because some icon came up on my screen when I put my hand up. If something arises, what are the possibilities? It either has to have arisen from something which is other than, let's say, if the sprout arises, it has to have arisen from something which is other than the present sprout. That's the general consensus of all thinking people. The only people who say different are the Samkhyas, maybe some other philosophical schools that say that it could arise, that it does arise from itself, in the sense that the sprout, let me use something else, the sprout has arisen from something which was already the sprout before, the seed. Remember when we were talking about the prakriti and so forth. But generally, other than the position of arising from both or causelessly, generally everyone says that a sprout arises from something which is other than itself. And the main argument here is whether that self is inherently existent self, inherently other than the sprout. If the seed, or let's say the cause in this case, was inherently other than the sprout, inherently different than the sprout. If it's inherently different, it would have no connection with the sprout at all. If the seed was inherently different, it would have no relationship, because the seed itself would be inherently existent. That means it doesn't depend on causes and conditions. This is an absurd consequence that's being thrown to those who believe in inherent existence. They don't accept this. They would say that inherent existence still allows for things to be impermanent. But from the Prasangika point of view, If something is inherently existent, let's say if the seed is inherently existent and the sprout is also inherently existent, they're distant from one another. They have no relation with one another. They both are independent, inherently existent by their own, not depending on causes and conditions. So the seed couldn't give rise to the sprout. If it could, then anything could give rise to the sprout, anything that's inherently different than it. Just say like charcoal or barley seeds, which are different than the rice seeds. Okay, so you could plant barley seeds and get rice coming out of them, or you could plant charcoal and get rice coming out of it, because charcoal is inherently, if you accepted that it was inherently existent and it was inherently other than the rice sprout, it would still give rise to that. If you assume that inherently existent other can give rise to an inherently existent and another inherently existent other thing.
Okay, so
the word other is being used a little overused there. That's why Joan used another the second time. Anyway, sorry, Suvash.
Okay, so I think you answered my question, which is that you're saying over here, other includes the seed, includes fertilizer, water, all those things are considered other too.
Other than the sprout.
Other than the sprout, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and so the thesis over here is the sprout cannot arise from anything other.
The sprout cannot arise from anything that is inherently other.
Yes, in this case, well, anything that is, so whenever we talk about self and other, same or other, we're talking about inherently existing same and inherently existing other, correct? The example that you just gave.
But the Prasangika position will be, as we evolve, that a sprout does arise from a merely other seed.
Right.
You know, the seed and the sprout are different. They are other, but not inherently other, not inherently existing other. Okay. They are merely imputed as other. And that distinction will be brought out in many, many different ways. Like, for instance, in a scale, when one side goes up and the other side goes down. We'll be talking about those later. So this is a little bit difficult section, right? Would you agree? Maybe not. Ron, what do you think? Difficult or no? Slight nod. No, slight. Not sure what he's thinking. Okay. Let's just summarize again. So what's worth doing is to go over this verse again. We will check about the two absorptions. We'll talk about that on Monday. That was referred to in the verse before the section started. Now the actual refutation of production from other begins with a quotation from the Rice Seedling Sutra, which we will investigate, and also this verse from Madhyamakavatara Karikas by Chandrakirti. If something can originate from something other, so he likes to say, in this case, originate. Shenla tenle gelte jungwa. If something can arise from something which is other, then pitch darkness can arise from burning flames. In fact, everything could arise from everything, for after all, being other equally pertains to all non-producing things. So everything is equally or the same in being other, even whether it is a producer, such as a seed. Say the seed of the sprout is its producer, and those things that are non-producer, and also producer also includes the manure and the water and the heat and so forth. Those which are not producer are stones in your garden, and someone in China or in Australia or something like that. They are other. Jennifer, what do you think?
Thank you, Venerable George. This is maybe for next time, but the question that arises is, for that argument, could also one make the absurd consequence that there would be no production period if there were an inherently existent other?
Yeah, you could also extend it that way. If you wouldn't even have to say inherently existent other. If phenomena were inherently existent, nothing could be produced. Because any one thing that might be a producer of something else, might be the cause of something else, by its status as being inherently existent, it would not depend on causes and conditions. And therefore, it couldn't change to give rise to something else. So I think that's a fair assumption. But here what we're doing is we're going back to this thesis of the first verse in fundamental wisdom, that phenomena are never produced at any time in any way from self, from other, from both, or causelessly. So that's those theses are used in the refutation of production, meaning inherent production. And in so doing, that is where we first get a glimpse, say, a way of generating an inferential cognizer, an understanding, conceptual understanding, a realization of emptiness. We say inferential cognizer, that means a cognition that has arisen through an inference, through a logical reasoning. And so that's the importance of this, why we're talking about this. There are many other ways of approaching it. As you said, if things were inherently existent, there couldn't be any kind of change. The world, the universe would be static. Okay. Anyone else have another thought before we end? How are we doing? Was this a tough lesson? Tough section? Amy says no. Okay, that's good to know, Amy. Nadine, was this a tough section or not? No, okay. I'm surprised. Okay. I thought it was tough. KT, what do you think?
Oops. Moderate, it's just wrapping my mind around the language for me. Like sometimes it gets restated in a way, it's like, oh, that's what it means.
Yeah, sometimes the restatement in another way. That's why the two translations are helpful. And even then, sometimes one has to check. Okay, so let's end.
Venerable George?
Yes,
Venerable
yeah.
George, I just wanted to point out that Richard posted something in the chat. It says if you go to the Zoom preferences, click on General, there's a feature called Activate the following emoji based on hand gesture recognition.
Okay.
And if you uncheck that.
Thank you, Richard. I don't know what other gestures I could have done. Does this give anything?
Exactly.
Now. Oh yeah, that's coming up. What other gestures can you give?
I think there's a hand clapping, but I think you can.
Oh, like this?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not good.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So at the beginning, we set motivation. In the middle, we tried to pursue our objective, which was to listen, contemplate, and meditate on the material. At the end, we want to dedicate whatever merits we created. So Mary Ellen, if you put up those prayers. Due to these virtues, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha. It doesn't say state, Lama Sangye Drubyone. May I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators, all wandering beings, without exception. That the Tibetan is Malupa, meaning even our enemies, people we don't like, lead them into that enlightened state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And for our incredible Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who the anniversary of his passing was just last week, peerless teacher and assembly of children of the conquerors, you Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, the conqueror Losang, father, spiritual father, and your spiritual sons, together with your lineages, all objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding, and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings, through explanation and practice, these are like the skillful means I mentioned at the beginning from the 6-session yoga dedication prayer, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged, which is what we should have in studying this material. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make this request, sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the conqueror's teachings, the Buddhist teachings, and as well for mother living beings. You suddenly departed to peace. At this I lost hope. Yet, through the undeceiving truth of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. I think also there when it says the undeceiving truth of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels and the great waves of mind generation of the children of the victorious ones. This is like calling on the words of truth. Due to these truths, that the blessings of the three jewels is undeceiving, and that the bodhisattvas have great waves of bodhicitta. Due to those truths, may a smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us. And then to all of our gurus, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, you are the supreme gateway for us, fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging as you do with skillful means, moved by mercy, illuminating spiritual friends. Please live long and stable lives. And also you can think of the other teachers this weekend if you have a chance to listen to their teachings. Venerable Renee is teaching at Thupten Norbu Ding. I hope there will be recordings of that, I assume. And so prayers for his long life, and for James Apple, who's teaching at Sichin Ling on the 21 Taras. All the teachers that are teaching, to dedicate our merits for their stable lives. So thank you very much. You can go on.
When is Venerable Renee, what time is Venerable Renee teaching, and where again?
I believe he's teaching at Thupten Norbu Ling. It may have been coincident with our course. It'll be continuing later. There's Stephen. Stephen, do you know? It's being recorded,
Yeah,
right?
he's teaching this weekend. As far as I know, it's being recorded, Venerable George, and you can go to the website at tnlsf.org.
Thank you.
Catch up on that. Okay. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing most of you on Monday, many of you, hopefully. And so next Saturday.
Thank you, Venerable George.
There, I see
Thank
this,
you.
this new version of Zoom has a different button to leave. Okay. See you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Vince.
George. Thank
All
you,
of you.
Mary Ellen.
Monday.
Goodbye.
Mary Ellen. Bye,
Oh, thank you, everybody.